Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. Begin tonight with approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have no presentations tonight. That takes us into a public hearing. Administrator Bennett.
Good evening, Commissioners. As you guys know, we've been working on the budget for some time now. Started back in January. Tonight, after our work session from last week, we've put together a preliminary budget. And if you don't mind indulging me, we'll spend a few minutes walking through some of the high points of it tonight. There we go. Okay, so tonight we have in front of you $111,927,728 budget that is balanced. Here's some high points on our revenue as we started putting this together. As you guys can see, property taxes have been strong for us, $2 million increase. It's about 4.5%. As you guys know, driven largely by a large increase in Zone 2, which is Georges Creek, went up about 23.5% this year. Amongst that number, real property is $1.3 million, and public utilities, the increase is $833,000. Income taxes, up $1.5 million. It continues to be strong for us. And I'll note, because we've already spoken about it, this does not include the lottery winnings of $15 million that we got income tax on. That's actually going to be in the fiscal 23 budget. What we should see here going forward is potentially continued growth with the $15 minimum wage coming on board. The concern we may have will be the economy, so we're going to have to watch this as we move through the budget year. Next line item, you see there, unexpended fund balance. The use of it has gone up by $7.1 million. Total fund balance we're going to use in this budget is $9.6 million. $4.5 million of that is excess fund balance from prior years that you guys had flexibility on that was in excess of our fund balance policy. The other $5.1 million, as we discussed, is going to come from the lottery proceeds that we did receive. So we received 15, we're going to use 5.1. That leaves us right about $10 million that we'll be able to reserve, and we'll do that in a future meeting. This still leaves us perfectly within our fund balance policy of 2 months of operations, plus another 3% for budget stabilization. So we're still perfectly positioned going forward. Last thing listed there is the disparity grant. As we know, it went down almost $1.8 million. So you have some good luck and then you have some bad luck. The good luck was the lottery winnings. The bad luck is it changed our disparity grant. That's formula driven based on income tax to bring you up to 75% of the state average. Since our income went up, our disparity grant went down. So we think it should come right back next year, but for this year it was a loss of $1.8 million. Next slide, very similar. This would just be expenditures. Just a couple things to point out. Salary and fringe benefits obviously went up because of the implementation of the salary study and the continued growth of a few departments that have been kind of necessary throughout the year. I will say that within this number is actually $500,000 worth of savings. We did a retirement incentive. 32 employees have taken us up on that incentive, and we estimate at least $500,000 in savings from doing that, both from bringing employees in at a lower wage and from some benefit savings from how our benefit plan works. Next line there, appropriations to major outside agencies. You can see it's up $2.7 million, driven by really one main thing. That would be our Board of Education. Their funding went up $2.3 million as a result of a combination of the Blueprint and Kerwin. State mandated number, the Board of Ed did not ask us for that. That's just simply the number that's calculated by the state. Those dollars will go to the Board of Ed and will be used largely for salaries to increase teachers' pay. I think the base teacher salary across the state come 2026 will be $60,000. Also, this will be for them to build out pre-K for both 4-year-olds and 3-year-olds. So that's what the lion's share of those dollars are for. Also within that is an additional $125,000 to Allegany College, as well as the library, and about $93,000 to the health department. Bottom line, we've also spoke about this, emergency management, really, we're talking about EMS in this case. It's now grown, it's something that, in 2007 was a zero for us, is now $7 million expenditure. We are providing great service, but at the same time, it obviously comes at a great cost. So that's something that longer term, we're going to have to try to figure out how we can contain this cost, the net cost of the operation, whether it be through revenue or controlling the expenditures. So much more to come on that. We'll continue our work on that one. Next slide here. Just the proposed rates that we have in front of you guys, no changes here at your request. Last year, we moved the income tax rate down to 3.03%. It was 3.05. Real property tax rate stayed the same, and we had our constant yield hearing on that. Recordation tax still sits at $3.50. Homestead tax credit, as assessments continue to rise, this is an important one. It's at 4%, so that caps the increase that homeowners can have if they've signed up for this credit. So it's saving homeowners real money. The cost of that program to the county is in excess of $20,000 a year now. So that's how much in taxes we're giving up and allowing property owners to keep. Tax rates here, we have the 9th lowest property rate tax in the state of Maryland. We have the 10th lowest income tax rate. So we're pretty well positioned amongst the state. This is the first kind of pie graph of revenues for us for the county. And there's a lot going on there, obviously. I'll just point out a couple things. Years ago, real property tax used to be more than 50% of our budget. The things that happened back in 2007, 2008 really drugged down real estate. It's thankfully recovering now, but it's still slow to recover. As we see this year was good. We had a nice increase in assessments in Zone 2. Income taxes continue to steadily rise. It's nearly 30% of our budget. Disparity grant that we talked about is down a little bit. It was 8+% last year. A few other things to point out here. Other governmental funding, a lot of people think we get a lot of grant money from other agencies. We actually don't. It's not that big of a percentage of our budget. Unexpended fund balance is one, obviously, we'll have to watch going forward. That's at 8% now. Historically, it's been a lower number, and with some of the things that happened this year, we feel we can lower that number moving into future years. And I guess it's just worthy of noting that there's, 3 sources make up 3/4 of our budget between income tax, property tax, disparity grant. So 3 sources run our budget. Here's some of our other funds. We focus on the general fund all the time, but we have many other funds within the county that we operate on an annual basis. We obviously have to balance them all. We spend the lion's share of our time on the general fund. These are some of the other ones that we have today. Water and sewer are not included in today's budget. You guys will actually be getting a presentation on that in a couple weeks. Making a rate recommendation and talk about some of the things they're seeing. So we'll build that in as we go forward. You can see there in the middle, the RBF, our revolving building fund, continues to be really strong for us. It's $11.5 million. That's all money generated from rents, from shell buildings that we've either built and or acquired over the years. That funds our economic development operation, and it provides us with money to do future projects in economic development. So that's been really good for us. Rocky Gap money that you see sitting there is $2.6 million, and we're likely going to revise that number upwards. Our percentage that we receive from gambling operations in the state of Maryland shifted from 3.75% up to 5.5%. So we'll see that revised as we move through this year. Last year. And we actually have a meeting of our local development council next week where we'll work on a spending plan for these funds, and that'll be presented to you commissioners here in the coming months. Transit operation, you can see in here, is nearly $3 million. A bright side of that is the county's contribution to that is only about $500,000. So most of those funds come from federal and state sources. And debt service is also listed there right at $3 million. Most of that comes from the general fund, and that's right on our goal of debt service at $3 million. So we're in a good place there. This next slide's one. If we had to pick one slide out of everything we do here, this would be the one, and we take this to a lot of different presentations. It's a good representation of what happens here, and it's an easy one to see, obviously. You can see on the left, education's our largest spend at almost 40% of the budget. Board of Ed's $34 million, Allegany College is $8.3 million. Public safety in the middle, in the green, has grown, as we all know, over the years. It used to be closer to 20%. Now it's nearly 28%. In that number, sheriff at $5.5 million, detention center at $10.3 million, EMS at $7 million, 911 $3.5 million, and our fire company's funding for them is $1.3 million. Public works, you can see to the right of that, is 11.3%. That would be our engineering department at $1.3 million, and our roads operation at $9.3 million. And I'll mention here, and Creed, I know you'll like this one, only $1.3 million of highway user revenue is included in this budget. That number used to be $4.8 million, and it used to actually allow our roads operation to reside outside of the general fund. So that's one more thing that we've taken on over the years. You can see there to the far right, general government, just 11%. We're happy about this. That's our goal, to keep that number low. This is administration for all of government, whether it be finance, tax, the administrator's office, state's attorney, you name it. We try to keep that number low, just like you would in a nonprofit. We want to put our dollars to work, and we're able to continue to do that. I've already mentioned this. You see the little teeny tiny blue piece there is economic development. Some people would kind of hit on you guys for, hey, why are we spending so little on economic development? Well, we're fortunate here, and I've mentioned it before, we have a revolving building fund. So that can sit outside of general government. That funds the economic development operation and provides funds for projects. So that's actually a good thing in this case. Next slide here is just a little bit of a different take on what we just talked about. You can see in the blue there on the right, nearly half of our dollars go right out the door in the form of appropriations to a multitude of outside agencies. 37% is salaries and fringe. That's not, a lot of people assume that would be a much larger number here, and it's 37%. Debt service is a very small piece of this puzzle, and we have, as we've mentioned, room for growth over time here if we like. We're in really good shape there. And then I will point out, capital is pegged at, we've pretty well cleaned capital out of this budget to help manage it. That is a concern. We'll have to watch that going forward, but I will say we've been fortunate the last few years with ARPA and CARES money. We've been able to take care of many of our capital needs already. So we're in decent shape there. A lot of numbers on this one, but I'll just point out a few high things. This is a slide that we put together every year just to show services that we provide that municipal government doesn't. A lot of people think there's a lot of duplication of services. Actually, 2/3 of our budget goes to things that the municipalities don't fund. A lot of examples of those we've already talked about: education, our detention center, 911, our libraries, health department, transit, elections. Everything else that is a duplicate service is covered by tax differential. So about 1/3 of our budget actually gets thrown into the tax differential calculation. We give Frostburg and Cumberland on average a 13-cent tax break. Those residents get a tax break on Allegany County taxes. That's us giving up in excess of $2 million of property tax a year. So here's our debt service transfer. As you guys know, we have to fund a lot of different agencies. We have to fund the capital for Allegany College, our library, our Board of Ed, any infrastructure project we do here at the county, Public safety is a piece of this. Economic development is a piece. Our Board of Ed is obviously the biggest piece, and it's two main reasons. Mountain Ridge and Allegany High School. They are almost the entirety of the Board of Ed's allocation there for debt service. Those are two great new schools that we have, and we still have a little bit of debt service on both of them. As I've mentioned, we're well under our debt service goals, and then you guys will hear a presentation on CIP here in a couple weeks at our next meeting. So this is support that we provide for Allegany College of Maryland, and I won't spend a ton of time here. Just point out a few things. You can see one is a good thing. Allegany College's enrollment is improving and has recovered from COVID. They're pretty well right back to where they were before COVID hit. They've been, over the years, very modest to us in their requests for additional funding, and they've been good partners with us. And I will point out, too, what's not included here is the Rocky Gap dollars that's sent to Allegany College for the scholarship fund. That's $360,000 a year that comes from Rocky Gap funding, which we haven't counted here. We do kind of the same thing then for the Board of Ed. And I'll just point out a few things here as well. Their enrollment is actually up a little bit, and it's in part because they're bouncing back a little bit from COVID, and in part because they now include pre-K in their calculation. As we know, we used to focus on maintenance of effort, and that's kind of gotten thrown out the window with Blueprint, Kerwin money. Maintenance of effort technically would have went down this year, but because of Kerwin and Blueprint, funding went up $2.3 million. So, and we expect this to continue for the next couple years, so we're going to have to be prepared for big increases here for the next few years. And, you know, well, I mentioned it before, the Board of Ed didn't come asking for this. We actually have a really good relationship with them right now. We help each other. Commissioner Caparella and I actually had a meeting with them just yesterday to talk about a few things. So a good relationship. We'll continue to work with them and monitor this as we go forward. That's really it for tonight's presentation. We wanted to keep it kind of brief. We have an entire budget document that we've built so far, which will be online after this. There's a few hard copies extra here if someone would like one. As you guys know, we'll have CIP and water and sewer information at our next meeting. There'll also be another hearing for this budget where the public can comment on it during that meeting. Then we'll adopt our budget on May 25th. Unless there's any issues. And I'd just like to thank Pam Diaz and Kirsten O'Donnell in Finance. They've done the lion's share of the work in this presentation and done a lot of work, make this easy for me. So at this point, really, any questions from you guys or anyone? I don't know if anyone signed up by any chance.
Nothing.
No comments?
No. Thank you for all your work.
Sure, absolutely.
And a choppy year.
A little bit of a choppy year,
thank
yes.
you. That'll take us to Maryland Recovery Housing Program funding. Mr. Nedved.
Hello, Commissioners. This is a public hearing for the Maryland Recovery Housing Program grant for Archway Station. The Archway Station's recovery housing project. Notice was given in the Cumberland Times News on Saturday, April 15th, 2023, that the Allegheny County Commissioners would sponsor a public hearing on this subject. The Maryland Recovery Housing Program is a federally funded program designed to assist county governments with the provision of stable, temporary housing for individuals in recovery from a substance use disorder. The state has $2,975,589 available for this competitive funding round. The Maryland Recovery Housing Program is funded with Community Development Block Grant funds for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development and will be managed by the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. And I apologize for the length of this, but it is only one page. Persons in recovery for a substance use disorder are in the process of changing to improve their health and wellness. They live a self-directed life and to strive to reach their full potential. The intent of the Maryland Recovery Housing Program is to support persons in recovery by providing stable temporary housing. For the Archway Station Recovery Housing Project, the Allegheny County Commissioners proposed to submit an application to the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development by May 12, 2023, the deadline for the grant application. Archway Station is a nonprofit 501c3 and has requested that the county make application for funds to purchase a property in Allegheny County to be used as a recovering house for women and children. Archway Station seeks an amount up to $350,000 from the CDBG funding to establish such a program in Allegheny County. For the Archway Station Recovery Housing Project, a background for the project has been provided at this public hearing and has also been posted to the county's website. Further, a draft application is available for the public to review and to provide comments beginning Monday, April 17th, 2023 until Friday, April 28th, 2023 during normal business hours at Allegheny County's Department of Economic and Community Development in this building, 701 Kelly Road, Suite 400, Cumberland, Maryland. At this time, I'm asking for any comments and/or questions about the Archway Station Recovery Housing Project and/or the application. Do we have anybody signed up? Okay. Having heard none, thank you for your time, Commissioners. Thank you for having this public
Thank you,
hearing.
David.
Very, very thorough, Mr. Nedved. Thank you.
As always.
As always.
That'll take us to our action agenda. First item, MOU with LaVale Sanitary Commission. Adam Patterson. Good evening.
Good evening, guys. We got a large-scale project going on in Lower LaVale, which is associated with a sewage pump station. In addition to that, there's a water line replacement. For LaVale Sanitary Commission, it's going to go down Route 40 and into Cumberland. MDE granted some loan associated with that water line replacement project. LaVale Sanitary Commission is unable to be the borrower, so the county is going to borrow the funds. On behalf of LaVale Sanitary Commission, there's an MOU that you guys have before you that outlines kind of the process is quite simple. LaVale is going to build a debt service to their customers. The customers will pay LaVale back. The county will then annually submit a bill to LaVale. LaVale will then pay the county. And so we'll pay the debt service then on behalf of LaVale's customers to MDE. Any questions?
Very good.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Second action item, we have announcement and publication of RFP for development market rate housing at the old Allegheny High School site. Adam Strott, please.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to talk about this project. As we all know, market rate housing is, or the lack thereof, is a major barrier for us to attract and retain a qualified workforce here in Allegheny County. And our department has been involved in a number of large-scale housing projects, including Memorial Hospital as a 50-50 partner with the City of Cumberland and working with Frostburg for their project on Center Street. This project is the culmination of months of planning and coordination with the City of Cumberland to develop owner-occupied middle-density housing at that site. It comprises roughly 12 acres and has the potential to fit roughly 100 to 115 units there. So this is a very exciting opportunity for us, and I'll leave it open to you if you have any questions about the RFP itself. I'm I'm asking the commissioners to approve the motion for me to publish this tomorrow as we are just finalizing the details.
I know that we've been discussing this for some time. We're very excited to see the proposals and eventually the outcome with this. It's a very good project. Any other comments, gentlemen?
Just thank you all for putting this together. I know this has been a lot of work, trying to pull all this together. There's a lot of moving parts to it, working with the city, working with the county, the different zoning ordinances and that. So
Yes.
my hat's off to you all for getting this put together in a very timely manner, actually.
Thank you.
Well, I've been waiting a long time. It was 2012 when we agreed to build a new high school with this in mind when the agreement was made and what the reuse of the property would be. So it's been 11 years, but we're glad to see it move forward. So thank you.
And continue to move at this rate. Exactly.
Yeah, a little faster.
It's never fast enough, is it? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Adam, thank you very much. Yep. That takes us to our consent agenda. Mr. Bennett.
Good evening again, Commissioners. 12 items tonight on the consent agenda for you. Item A is Code Enforcement Fine Schedule, Resolution 23-8. This would update a 1998 fine schedule to better align the previous schedule with fines ranging from $100 to a maximum of $1,000. Item B is the Maryland Recovery Housing Grant application for Archway Station Recovering Housing Project, Resolution 23-9. This would authorize you to submit an application for $350,000 from Maryland Recovery Housing Grant to be used towards the acquisition of a building for the project. Item C is rules and regulations governing employees of Allegany County, Resolution 23-10. This would amend the rules and regulations for county employees, approving the job description for the position of victim witness coordinator in the state's attorney's office. Item D, Columbia Gas right-of-way agreement for Moss Avenue. This would authorize the commissioners to sign a right-of-way agreement with Columbia Gas, allowing them a right-of-way across 11613 Moss Avenue to install a gas service line. Item E, Old Allegany High School field use agreement with the Braddock Warriors. This would authorize the commissioners to sign a field use agreement to allow the Braddock Warriors football team use of the fields and parking lot at the Old Allegany High School site until November 30th, 2023. Item F is the renewal of operation and maintenance agreement with LaVale Athletic Association for Holly Avenue and Lions Field. This would authorize the commissioners to sign a 3-year agreement with LaVale Athletic Association for continued operation maintenance. Item G is memorandum of understanding between Allegany County Detention Center and the Family Crisis Resource Center to authorize the commissioners to sign an MOU for Family Crisis Resource Center to provide crisis intervention treatment to inmates of the Allegany County Detention Center for a 2-year period. This is funded by the state of Maryland. Public Safety and Correctional Services has no financial impact to the county. Item H is the request of public hearing on transit capital and operating funding to allow the Transit Division to hold a public hearing on June 6, 2023 at 1 p.m. to discuss capital and operating funding of the transit operation and requesting federal and state funds. This notice will be publicized in the Cumberland Times News. Item I is 2023 Thomas Automotive Wing Off and Music Festival. This would authorize the commissioners to allocate $1,500 from community promotions to sponsor the 2023 Wing Off on the weekend of June 17th at the Allegany County Fairgrounds. Item J is the 2023 Frostburg Elks Derby Day sponsorship. This would allow the commissioners to authorize $1,500 from the community promotions account to sponsor the 47th annual Frostburg Elks Derby Day on July 1, 2023. Item K is the Cumberland Skate Park ARPA Funds Award. Authorize the commissioners to allocate an amount not to exceed $250,000 from our ARPA funding to the City of Cumberland Skate Park project that will be at the Mason Sports Complex. And as you guys know, this was a request from a few weeks ago. The city's formalized that request to us, so it's here for you tonight. And finally, item L, wireless infrastructure upgrade bid award. This would be to award the winning bid amount of $108,117.72 to Connex Communications out of Cumberland, Maryland, to provide a wireless infrastructure upgrade at the Allegany County Fairgrounds, and this would be using ARPA funds.
Very good. Any questions or comments? Any items withheld?
No, sir.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. That'll take us to our public comment. First speaker is Dwayne Miller. If you could state your address, please, when you come up.
My address?
Thank you.
246 McHenry Street in LaVale.
Thank you.
So Commissioner Atkinson, Commissioner Brody, Commissioner Caparelli. My name is Dwayne Miller. I'm a lifelong resident of Allegany County and a resident with my wife and 2 daughters in LaVale. I work in every square inch of the county, from Mount Savage to Malcolm, from Westernport to Sidling Hill, and all points in between. If there's one thing I do know about the broadband connectivity in this county, is that it is extremely lacking. I talk to residents all over Allegany County, and there are very few that would say that the internet speed is sufficient. I have not done any official polling, but being a customer myself, I can also say that the internet connectivity in this county is subpar at best. I'm actually one of the lucky ones in the county because my family can actually get cable broadband. I have friends and relatives that live in rural areas throughout the county that can't get anything at all. Not cellular, not DSL, not anything. And if they can get the internet, it's either so unreliable, it's almost unusable, or so slow, it's unusable. The FCC would have you believe that all of Maryland, including Allegany County, is approximately 97% covered by broadband providers. When in reality, it's closer to 87% for Allegany County. And out of that 87% of Allegany County that is covered, I'm sure half of those residents and businesses are severely underserved. I'm going by what I personally experience daily at my job. These companies say one thing and deliver something totally different. I'm calling attention to this because recently Allegany County was once again passed over for rural broadband expansion grants. Our neighbors, Washington and Garrett counties, were awarded several $1 millions for various projects, mostly FTTP or FiOS, or fiber to the premise projects. These upgrades to our broadband infrastructure are vital to attract businesses and people to the area. And yes, it is infrastructure. Just like roads, just like bridges, just like the electrical grid, it is part of the infrastructure. Gone are the days where mom and pop and the kiddies gathered around one computer in the house, and they all took turns looking up websites on Netscape with a 56K connection. Now a lot of homes have Ring doorbells, they have PS5s, they have Alexas, and outdoor surveillance cameras. My home has 14 devices by itself, and the previous ones, I have none of them. So I don't have any of the ones I just mentioned. The fast, reliable internet is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. There is an even widening divide in this country, and one of the main factors for this is the overwhelming difference in broadband saturation between urban and rural communities. I'm asking you to write a letter to Kenrick Gordon, the Director of Rural Broadband, and put your full support behind acquiring a bid for Allegany County's broadband expansion. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
I believe so. I know that we've had significant money allocated through the federal funds that came through for upgrades. Could you comment a little bit on that?
Sure,
Mr. Bennett
Commissioner.
will
So-
address what you're asking as well, sir.
So we've had a few different things. Obviously, broadband is certainly a priority for the commissioners on this one. It's currently an active $1,050,000 Connect Allegany grant that we used with ARPA money and put out there. It was a mix of going to businesses and to residents who had service issues. Just since 2019, we've secured $3.6 million for infrastructure for about 3,500 households. That leveraged about $8.4 million federal dollars that we put towards this. We still have an ongoing project in Old Town, which is part of the reason we didn't get some of the funding from Maryland in this case, this time around. That project's still active, so it
Talking
counted.
communications?
Correct. So it's federally funded. That's why there's no funding in that area, because the project is ongoing.
Can I
So
get a show of hands of anybody that has heard of Talkie Communications? Okay, there's two people. Okay. Okay. How did they get a grant?
they put in for it. They have a federal
For
grant.
Old Town, where they don't know what they're getting into. I do, but they don't. So I'm trying to wrap my head around how and what the alleyways were that they acquired such a grant that is basically as rural can get. And I'm at a loss, because I've never heard of Talkie Communications.
Right.
I've heard of BreezeLine, I've heard of Xfinity, I've heard of Verizon, I've heard of Cox, I've heard of those companies, Spectrum. I've even heard of Shentel. I've never heard of Talkie.
Right.
So how did that happen?
They applied for the funding and received it and had a project that they put in front of the feds and got funding for it.
Okay, I thought that was at a state level.
The state's involved, but it's federal money.
Okay. My concern is, and I'm basically here trying to advocate for people who just don't know how bad they got it. They don't know how bad the internet is. They just, will complain about it, and then they don't know what to do about it, because most residents don't know what their latency is, or what their speed is, or what, they can do with the speed that they do have. So that's the problem. And on top of that, I see no movement. I've been told that the Talkie bid is still in engineering. So I don't know if that's true, if it's just one of these things that's been delayed, but I work down there and I haven't seen nothing. So there was also another project that was supposed to be in Allegany, and that I don't see anything there as well. So that's my whole thing. I would hope that you put your full support into, trying to get a bid, contact whoever needs to be contacted, because this is what vital for us.
And I can say members of our office have been in contact with Kendrick Gordon as early as today.
Mm-hmm.
So we stay in constant contact with them.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Dwayne.
Thanks.
And if we could find out a little bit more about that contract, what it entails, when it's supposed to begin, and what they're actually required to do, so we, can monitor it also.
Absolutely.
Something's obviously very important. Mr. Bianconi. Somebody else would have messed up that name. Welcome. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Richard Bianconi, 324 Sunset Drive, LaVale, Maryland. Commissioner Atkinson, Commissioner Brody, Commissioner Caparelli, thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'm here to speak regarding the women's clinic, healthcare clinic, and perhaps I should use finger quotes when it comes to healthcare when referring to the clinic. I missed the session 2 weeks ago, and I understand there were a lot of things said. There were a lot of people that spoke regarding the incoming clinic. I've also read in the paper where there's been pleas for civility in this discussion. And I find it kind of ironic that those pleas for civility are coming from those that are looking to kill children. I walked in here this evening not necessarily having prepared remarks, so this could go one or two ways. Very simply said, I feel as I'm speaking for myself, but I have been in contact with a lot of people in the past 2 weeks, that this is something that we need to say no to, civilly. No to this clinic. The culture of death is looking to plant a flagpole here in Allegany County. I realize that we live in a state that has enshrined the murder of young children in state law, is looking to enshrine the murder of young children into the Constitution. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to murder children here in Allegany County. So to be very brief, I've been doing some work, and there's an organization. The idea is very simple, that we designate Allegany County as a sanctuary city for the unborn. I know there's probably some legal loopholes, or legal, I should say loopholes, legal challenges that may be faced, but looking here at our county attorney, you know as well as I do, no doesn't mean no. Yes doesn't always mean yes. We have an opportunity here. If the rest of the state of Maryland wants to collectively go to hell in a handbasket, we don't have to make a suicide pact to go with them. I'm asking the commissioners to look into this opportunity to have Allegany County adopt language and incorporate Allegany County as a sanctuary city for the unborn. That's all I have, gentlemen.
Okay. Appreciate you, Rich, and thank you for forwarding that information to me as well.
Yes, sir, and we'll follow up as we can. Thank you.
Anytime, absolutely. Thank you. Any final comments tonight, Attorney Beeman?
Mr. Cabral, I just, just to let you know that, in follow-up to Mr. Bianconi's point, that is, you had directed my office to continue exploring options. That the Sanctuary of the Unborn is an organization that largely has established sanctuary cities, in some instances counties, in the states of Texas and New Mexico. It's an avenue that we're exploring. As we discussed last week, I believe that the Maryland law and Maryland's proposed constitutional amendments would make that extremely difficult, but it's an option that we continue to explore, and I'll provide further updates to you as we look more into that.
Thank you, sir. Administrator Bennett.
Commissioners, I'd just like to take a minute and just thank a whole bunch of people for the Allegany High site. This has been a long time coming, as you guys know. I'd like to thank Adam Batterson and his crew for getting the site prepped, doing all the asbestos remediation, working for a long time to make sure that site's ready. I'd like to thank Jeff and Adam specifically then as well for their work in getting this RFP ready. I think it's really exciting. There's great potential there, and it's going to be fun to see where this goes for us.
And the speed that it's been moving at has been
We've tried to get this moving as quick as possible, and they've really worked hard at making sure it's ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Atkinson.
Nothing
At a
tonight.
loss?
Yeah.
Commissioner Brody?
Sir, Commissioner Atkinson told me I said too much at the last one.
Okay, yeah. That's right.
Since when have you listened to me?
I have nothing to add. That being said, our next meeting will be May 11th at 5 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
You know,
All three of you, did you get one?